Okay, so we're back. We're going to pick up, I'm going to do a quick review of a couple slides, and then we're going to pick up with the actual conduction pathway. So remember what we said about autorhythmic fibers. Individually, they're myocytes. Collectively, we call them autorhythmic. They form what is known as the cardiac conduction system, and they are going to be self-excitable cardiac muscle fibers, meaning that they have the ability to generate their own action potentials, that in so doing they're going to generate muscle contractions in the heart, and they're going to do so without any dependence upon the central nervous system. We touched on the two nodes, the SA node being the sinoatrial node and the pacemaker of the heart. It is the most rapid firing of the nodes, spontaneously firing at 90 to 100 times per minute. The second node we touched on was the atrioventricular node, or AV node, that will depolarize roughly 40 to 50 times per minute. And then we said finally that if both the SA node and the AV node have an issue, they're suppressed, they lose their ability to depolarize appropriately, then the ventricular fibers have within themselves the ability to depolarize and contract between 20 and 40 times per minute. So let's take a look at this, this actual conduction pathway. So you're going to want to know this. You want to know the details. You want to know what's happening where. You want to know who's depolarizing. You want to know some big vocab words here. So let's just run through it and we can work from there. So we're going to start off at number 1, and that is going to be at the sinoatrial node. So all cardiac excitation, under normal circumstances, all cardiac excitation is going to begin right there in the sinoatrial node. That node is located in the right atrial wall. It's inferior and slightly lateral to the opening of the superior vena cava. And that node, those cells within that node are unique in that they do not have a stable resting membrane potential. So, and that is exactly precisely why they spontaneously depolarize to threshold. So those SA node cells, again, do not have a stable resting membrane potential. They do spontaneously depolarize to threshold, and once they hit threshold, they're going to generate an action potential. That spontaneous depolarization is called a pacemaker potential. So there's a vocab word for you, the pacemaker potential. When that pacemaker potential reaches threshold, just like we learned previously, when a membrane reaches threshold, we're going to trigger an action potential. What's going to happen is that action potential is going to propagate through both atria. So it's going to run along the gap junctions, and it's going to move through this right atrium from that point, that source point, the SA node, and it's also going to move across, and it's going to depolarize across the left atria. So we're going to see that action potential move across. That happens via the gap junctions. Remember, the gap junctions were located in the intercalated discs of those fibers. Following that action potential, so following that atrial action potential, both atria will contract at the same time. So remember that the action potential is the chemical shifting and the trigger that then causes the fibers to relax. Again, if you're not really feeling confident in that, go back and take a look at sliding filament mechanism. So I've got an action potential generating in the SA node. It's going to depolarize via the gap junctions across both atria, and we're going to see muscle contraction, which is the contraction of both of the left and the right atria simultaneously. As that action potential reaches the AV node, which is right here, the atrioventricular node. As it reaches the AV node, it slows. So one of the jobs of the AV node is to slow down that action potential. It's going to cause a delay. What that delay does for us and for this conduction pathway and this whole cardiac circulatory system is it gives time. It provides time for the atria to empty into the ventricles. It's just slowing everything down just a tiny bit so that there's time to physically move that blood from the atria into the ventricles. So the AV is, if you read the text, the AV is located in the interatrial septum, so in the wall between the two atria. It is anterior to the opening of the coronary sinus, and it receives action potential from the SA node. It then slows it. So the AV node slows the action potential that is received from the SA node, and what it's going to then do is conduct that action potential into the ventricular wall through the AV bundle. The AV bundle is also called, so here it is right here, the AV bundle. It's also called the bundle of His. I know that looks like his, hers and his, but it's actually pronounced His. So it will move that action potential through the bundle of His. That bundle of His is going to divide into fibers. Those fibers are called Purkinje fibers. That's your spelling at number 5, Purkinje fibers. The AV bundle is the only site where an action potential can move from atria into the ventricles. Remember, we had that cardiac skeleton that we spoke about earlier in the chapter, and this cardiac skeleton was responsible for acting as an electrical insulator, which is great because what it does is it forces this electrical stimulus to move down a very specified path. So the AV bundle is the only site where that electrical activity can move from atria into ventricles. That's because of the fibrous skeleton. As that action potential is going to propagate along the AV bundle, it's going to then enter both the right and the left bundle branches. You can see those labeled there. They're going to branch into the Purkinje fibers. Purkinje fibers are large diameter fibers. They are rapid conductors of action potentials. They're going to go down from the apex of the heart, and they're going to work their way back upward through the remainder of the ventricular myocardium. As that happens, what we're going to see is we're going to see simultaneous ventricular contraction on both the left and the right hand sides of the heart. So as those ventricles contract, we're going to push that blood up and out toward the semilunar valves, the pulmonary semilunar valve on the right and the aortic semilunar valve on the left, and that's your conduction pathway. So sinoatrial node to the AV node, from the AV node down through the AV bundles, or the bundle of His if you prefer. Bundle of His into the right and left bundle branches that are then going to branch into the Purkinje fibers, and they are going to conduct those action potentials along the ventricular walls and allow for contraction.